Buddy, thank you, Aditya. Thank you for the introduction. I guess today's been a very wetty day, and there have been, it's an attempt to reach here for some of us. What I would do is, I think most of us are aware of, what is family office and what does it mean, for India. As Aditya put it, it's more of a US phenomenon. Actually took off a lot due to the our European counterparts who have invested a fair bit of resources in actually making it, relevant for families across the globe. In Kotak, within Kotak Bank, this is a vertical which is a separate SIDD, so to say. And this, we've been kind of engaged with clients since about 2007, when we got the license from the Reserve Bank of India and SEBI. So what I will do is, apart from the fact that, I'll just take you quickly through a few of the slides that I've put together to just give you, a feel of what it is. And we probably will kind of also have a discussion in terms of, practically how does it really kind of work. So to start with, I would say that family office is a very elaborate and, it's an experience by itself. And it's absolutely based upon professional, right from the investment space to the legal space, to various genres of life. It actually cuts across a lot of professional across various genres, as I said, and it's kind of a very customized kind of a experience, so to say. And when one looks at family office, I think it is not just about the structure, but also it is to do with the people associated with this experience. And as I said, it is very customized. So in India, as Ronnie was just mentioning, I mean, it's you have different families, traditions, values, which drives thought processes. And each and every family has a set of requirements which is completely different from what it is to the next family. So towards that, I think it's very important to say that a family office, to have a true family office experience, you really need a dedicated set of professionals which cuts across various genres to be able to address the complications in terms of each families. Now, obviously, a family office also means that they are responsible for various aspects to do with, financial matters of the family. Primarily, I would say, and because this is just, today still in India, you have 70 to 80% of the things being driven more by financial matters than anything else. So obviously, you have to have a management and administration cutting across investments, trust, legal, as well as complex tax issues concerning not only the business in which the family is, but also as various businesses sell out, they also have to kind of really look at how to efficiently structure the investments from a tax standpoint. The advantages of having a family office, of course, is that it is, one pool of professionals, one set of information on which the entire family depends upon. And professional advice, as I said, is something which is which you get because there is a dedicated set of resources that are made available by the family office. 3, I think more important is the continuity aspect as well, because you tend to then depend upon various verticals, so to say, within the family office from time to time. And the experience that this particular team gains by way of engaging with multiple set of families is something which is the excellence that even Ronnie talked about. So I think, taking cue from excellence is something which is what is represented by continuity, because once you invest in a pool and in values and in terms of ways of cutting across various complications, then there is this excellence which comes out and which then can be continuously taken advantage of by various families from time to time. And from a family office point of view, there are two sets of let me just move. Can someone help me with this? Yeah. Just go to the next slide. Which one is this? Yeah, that's not it. Yeah. So there are two types of family office. One is a single family office and one is a multiple family office. Single family office is obviously dedicated to just the family alone, and to that extent it's complete privacy in terms of whatever the family deals with in terms of complications with respect to financial and non-financial matters. It is a time-consuming job because you need to get as I said, the pool of resources that are required to actually be able to kind of deal with situations. So it is a very time-consuming effort in terms of setting it up. Pretty expensive because the kind of resources that you're looking at are mostly specialists in the respective verticals. As Ronnie mentioned, he has one on the private equity space and one on the listed space. But as various families have various complicated businesses and sets of investments and structures, you technically need a lot of more specialist resources also to be able to deal with these complications from time to time. Again, obviously when it's your own family and it's your own set of people on your own payroll, the dependence on these set of guys is very high, and also the consistency in terms of the way that you deal with situations is also challenged, because attrition is a major challenge that many of the single family offices today have actually faced practically. Also what happens is, since you are a single family office, you would have dealt with your own complications and that's about it. You wouldn't be having an exposure to the trends that are seen by various families in terms of dealing with various practical situations. So to that extent, you have a challenge. A multi-family office, of course, is part of the institution. So it is one institution which caters to multiple families. So to that extent, you obviously can leverage upon in terms of the institutional resources, because you got a lot of talent pools sitting across the institution which one can really make use of. And also from various families' point of view, what we've really seen is that it's pretty easy to sign up with any institution. The economy of scale is there, so the costs, which I think most of the families are very sensitive about, is something that is available to go with. Also a large network of experts, as I said, because as an institution you will be obviously, as a multiple family office will be interacting with a lot of experts across. So the family gets to kind of access a large network of experts as well. And then you have, it's a little longer term, a more stable institutional relationship. I think the most important thing that we've seen, which many families have really taken advantage of, is the fact that there are a lot of exchanges of views, information. There are a lot of conclaves which happen where multi-family offices, many families get together and exchange views. Also, the multiple family office, the institutional office, has a lot of data and experience in terms of how various other families have dealt with situations which can also be kind of shared. So that's something which is I think very, very important, from a multiple family office kind of a model. So I would say that, practically speaking, if you were to look at between single family offices and multiple family offices as a model, in India, I think there are very few and very well known, as Ronnie mentioned, one is the Premjis, of course, who have their own family office. And there are quite a few other IT promoters as well. And there are a few other promoters who have kind of been running family office for quite some time. Now, it's very difficult to judge whether it is successful, not successful, because one would never know unless you delve into the complications of that family as to whether you could have done any value add or not. And as I said, it's not public information, it's all private. So to that extent, anyone outside the family, outside the single family office will not be really able to know whether one could have really added value or not. But the experience that we've had of running this now for literally 8-9 years is the fact that we really have seen a lot of single family offices actually moving to a multi-family office structure, as well as single family offices using a lot of advisors and multiple family offices to really support the single family office. So that's, I think, the model that India has really seen. So I would say the model that is relevant for India here is a multiple family office primarily. There are a few cases of single family offices who still work with a lot of advisors, consultants, as well as multiple family office. Okay, so what we try to do is to really see how and when does a multiple family office is relevant and when does a single family office is relevant. And this is something that we try to kind of really look at the families today as to what they've been doing. So what we've been seeing is that till about, roughly about $100 million worth of, financial assets, we've not really seen anyone really venturing into the single family office space. Anything which has been, close to about 200 crores plus, roughly about $25-30 million. Those have kind of actually, outsourced all their activities to a multi-family office. And the nature of investments that we've seen that they are making is pretty simple. Again, obviously, it all is driven by risk appetite, but broadly what we've seen is people have been kind of looking to do just simple, investments. Obviously, the valuations of whatever they have is all based on publicly available data. The frequency of transactions are pretty in the low to medium range. And they've normally engaged 1 to 2 advisors. What we've seen is 2 advisors is what generally in this space people have really used. Once you get into the 200 to 500 crore kind of a corpus, then slightly complex products and investments have been looked at. Mostly public information, but you obviously also have to be relying in terms of valuation on the private space. Again, the frequency of transactions remain very low to medium. Again, I would say even in this space, we've generally seen about 2 advisors, a few of them just going with 1, but otherwise you've actually seen people use about at least 2 advisors. The moment it goes into the 500 crore plus, that's where people what families have done is that they've started looking at whether they should be really looking to set up a single family office or not. But eventually, I think most of them have decided not to. But as I said, the structure that has really worked and is working in India is that most of them have, even if they have a single family office, at $100 million plus, they have technically looked at, to be working with multi-family office as well as multiple advisors. So they do need, support from multi-family offices, even though they have a single family office. So the investments is something that I think what we've really seen in India versus what you would have seen in the US or Europe. I think the key difference is that none of the families really want to invest in that kind of an infrastructure which is all inclusive and all encompassing in terms of all the family requirements. They've generally kind of, gone for a mix of both. And in this case, of course, the kind of the investments and the structures are pretty complicated, and you have NBFCs where one needs to deal with transactions. You have also to be looking at various private equity stakes where this corpus actually looks for taking strategic stakes. E-commerce is a big flavor that we see with clients today. But from time to time that we've seen that this space, which is $100 million plus, is the segment where people start looking at the private space as well. And here again, what we have seen is that they've been working with at least 2 advisors. So to kind of look at what are the responsibilities of a family office, I think primarily in India, I would still say over the last 8-9 years that we've been doing this, is that the focus has been primarily led by investments. The interest has been more on the investments, though lately over the last 2.5 to 3 years, we've seen a little bit of shift happening towards the accounting and the consolidated reporting and the other value-added services. But it's primarily been investment management, and where as we all know, we technically look at the investment policy statement, which I think is the primary focus of most of the families that they want to have. And of course, you have the investment committee and a way to evaluate investments recommended by various people. So this is what broadly is covered by the investment management, from a expectation point of view. Structuring and succession planning in terms of family governance. I think family governance as a subject matter, again, as I said, as much as the single family office is being of interest to only a few, family governance is something which is just about picking up. And again, just to kind of elaborate, this is to do, and I have a slide which I will just take you through, but is to do with family constitution, charter, and the mission statement. So this is something which is now just about gaining a little bit more of interest, though we've not really seen people really following it through, because this is a good 6 to 12 month exercise. There are various consultants also available in the industry who are assisting, lawyers who are assisting people doing this. But this is also something that a family office typically needs to have in terms of assisting families. The second aspect is, of course, the legal structure, because there's a lot of structuring which is needed, which is not only the holdco, which is the investment holding company related structuring, whether it is to be done through an LLP or if there is an NBFC, if can a demerger take place where the business is also held, and so there are a little bit of structuring which is to be done there, so that it's something which is a little bit more sustainable. LLP structures have been looked at very much today, and I would say that this is something that I think we've been seeing lately, at least for the last 3 to 4 years, in terms of the structure of investing and the structure of doing business. Now, these are two things that people have started looking at, because what in India we generally have been experiencing with families is that most of the families want to invest in new businesses, take out the capital, let the profit run, is been the attitude of most of the people, most of the entrepreneurs who are the second generation and the first generation. This is quite common. So from that standpoint, legal structuring is becoming very relevant. Trust structures, I think over the last 3-4 years, estate duty and gift tax is something which has been talked about a lot by the big fours as well as from the government. There have been noises that this is something that one needs to be really looking at. So from that standpoint, I think this is a space which has really picked up over the last 3 to 4 years, where people really want to be looking at, and now people are saying that, if I buy any incremental, real estate, should I actually have a trust in place so that I can buy it out of the trust rather than do it outside and then transfer and then pay the stamp duty and the transfer charges. So I think people have started getting conscious of the fact that estate duty and the taxing of the rich is something which is a phenomenon which can kind of hit them sooner or later. So grandfathering of those trusts is something very important, because the finance minister may come up in the budget and say, okay, any trusts which have run for 2 years will not be subject to estate duty and gifts act, for example. So grandfathering is something which is uncertain, so people don't want to take that risk. I think people are now really wanting to see this as part of the responsibility of the family office as well. Is that, are you capable of really, do you have a solicitor in your family office who can really guide me and my family in terms of my inheritance and tax structuring? Primarily it is estate and inheritance. So that's where the focus is. The third is, of course, accounting and taxation. I think a lot of families have wanted this as one of the service where they want someone to be on their side. It's good to say that, yeah, you have the big fours, you have so many tax consultants, but I think many families have found it very, very helpful to actually rely on the family office, so that the professional, the expert in this family office will actually sit with them and then talk to the big fours and the various tax specialists, and somewhere they want someone on the tax side to be really looking at their own kind of ways of doing things and their own comfort, because every family, there are certain families who are really aggressive in the way they look at tax planning. There are a lot of families who are not as aggressive. So it depends on each family. So somewhere, this space is really grown over the last 2 to 3 years, where tax planning and structuring for family as well as accounting is really kind of being seen as a very important ingredient of family office from a responsibility point of view. Reporting is of course, I think that's something which is really very, very important, because what they really want is from a individual level, because there are daughters, there are sons, there are various age profiles. Some are aggressive, some are conservative, some are so different profiles, different ways of investing, and somewhere they want everything to be grouped and consolidated and shown at a family level, as well as they want to have individual member level kind of data to be shown and analysis to be shown. And this is something that is really, really as considered as basic as far as any of the family office goes today, which probably may not have been there, say 4 years, 5 years back, but I think now this is really come into vogue. Asset register is another thing which people really are finding it very useful. This actually is nothing but a list. This just lists everything under the sun. So whether it is your vehicle's chassis number or the insurance or anything. So anything to do with your bank accounts and your insurances that you have, your details on that, and everything and anything is captured under the particular asset register. There are a lot of, for example, we remember a client in Delhi who in fact had about 136 crores worth of property, which he didn't even know that this existed, and there were certain approvals which had to be taken, and he didn't know that they were kind of, they have lapsed. So there are a lot of such families who are not aware of what their wealth constitutes, and if they can get one view of all of that in terms of a listing of all of that, that's what is called the asset register. Now, this is also something which is really, come into prominence. Concierge and philanthropy, as Ronnie spoke earlier, I think philanthropy is something that many families want to kind of allocate money. And what we've really seen is that 10 to 20% of the corpus of most of the families that we see is going towards philanthropy. Most of them are doing on their own. Some of them and many of them have today started inquiring. I think to kind of really broadly capture what philanthropy means in terms of from a requirement point of view of a family office, from a responsibility point of view, is that what they say is that, okay, if this is me, Rajesh, I want to do something in my own town, and this is something that I want to make a difference. Can you help me as a family office to really do that? So I'm saying that out of my 100 rupees, 10 rupees is something that you can use in this particular village that I'm kind of come from, and I want that to be used for a particular purpose. In fact, what we've done for families is that we've identified certain institutions who actually have a huge network of people across the country. And what they actually do is that if Rajesh says that this is what I need to do in my village, this institution comes back and gives you a data to really tell you that, this village doesn't need this. They actually have these kind of things which have been happening. There have been private things, there have been government initiatives. There have been a lot of these stuff which has already happened. So what this village needs is this. Can you do that? So I think this is what is also required of a family office, is to identify such institutions who can help them to really customize what they really want to do, in their own towns to make an impact. And the second one is, which is very generic, is something where you just identify one area, which is, say, education or hospital or anything, and then you kind of really look for institutions who really specialize on that. So that's something also which has kind of really shot into prominence over the past, I think, 3 to 4 years. Governance, now this is, I'll just touch upon this, though this is not something which is widely kind of been, practiced, but I would say that this is somewhere picking up now where, whether it is the first generation or the second generation today, or the first generation today who started the business, want to put this in kind of place where both the family as well as the business, there are certain ways that you really conduct yourself, whether it is to do with ethics, whether it is to do with the way you're bringing up children. So there are a lot of things which gets captured into this. It's nothing but it institutionalizes roles and responsibilities within families. So within family members, there are certain people who are good in doing certain things, and there are others who do other things. And this really defines where your areas of expertise are, where you're good, what each member of the family can contribute, as well as what each member of the family will be responsible for in terms of when they kind of take the family ahead. So whether it is to do with there is only one person who really talks well and he can be in front of the media, then that person literally has to undergo certain sets of things to make himself, the brand ambassador for the family. I'm just giving you an example. This has happened with one of the families in Delhi. Similarly, what this family also said is that, I have 2 sons, out of which, and I have got 3 sets of businesses, but I don't want, and a daughter of course, and I don't want these sets of individuals to come and work in my business unless they go through a set of things, whether it is to do with education, whether it is to do with actual training, for the respective business, right from the shaft floor. I want a kind of a roadmap plan for that particular kid to be into my business, say on a particular year, and then the family office comes in there to kind of literally. Along with, and there are consultants who do this, there are lawyers who do this, as I said earlier. So we actually sit with these set of consultants and sit with the family, spend a lot of time with the family to really put this whole thing into place. And so there are 3 things that broadly is under family governance. One is the constitution, which lays down the policies. It's kind of a quasi-legal doc. It's not legal, but it's somewhere very, very, kind of methodical and very, very kind of systematic in the way things are put as far as the policies for the family goes. And there's obviously the Karta defines the vision and the family values, which then is something is debated, the second generation, the third generation in terms of what they feed. And then somewhere, once it is all debated and frozen, then you define the roles and responsibilities of each and every member. Then within the family constitution, you also kind of have to map for each of the individuals of the family as to what are the preferences, spending habits, the education preferences, etc., etc. Now these again will be kind of married with what is really required for the family and what the family members really want to do. Family charter is nothing but a very simple decision-making tool, which is more of probably, it will also help in problem solving for the families, somewhere in a peaceful way. Again, it will be like a reference point in terms of defining the goals, management philosophy, ownership of shares, working company, working relationships, family relationships, and succession. So all of that is kind of really, it becomes like a reference document, so to say. And then of course the mission statement, which is more like, this is what I really want the whole family to kind of go. So the other thing which I thought I would just highlight is this IPS, which is pretty critical for most of the families, when they look at investments. This is something, which is a document which captures, now I've just taken a slide out of it, but this goes into like 30 to 35 pages in terms of defining the constraints and in terms of philosophy and all of these put together. But this is something which is a very important document which is expected out of the family office. The investment committee is also something which most of the family offices will have, and somewhere I think what is needed out of all this is the fact that you need to have external consultants, as I said, whether it is tax, legal, whether it is philanthropy, it is anything to do with things that you think there are specialists who can do a good job. Somewhere those are the external set of consultants. Then you have the tax advisor who's has to be part of the family office. You will need to have an investment advisor as well who's looking at the investments on a daily basis. You will need certain key members of the family office which will be also representatives from the families as well as the set of specialist people who will also have to be as part of the team, who have to be defined as per the family requirements. It's not necessary that all of them are there, but there needs to be certain key members who will always be there. But generally, this is the kind of construct that we kind of look at, from time to time for the investment committee. And the way kind of, we kind of engage is that, typically these families will have a CFO, so to say, who would be the client's person who would typically know all the things that you want to know about, because you can't be kind of troubling the client for every single information. So your office will coordinate with this guy for the day-to-day thing. And of course, there will be an institutional family office, which is what I just showed you in terms of what the structure would be. But they would engage with one or two advisors, from time to time if necessary. And of course, tax consultant advisors. And of course, then it goes to the underlying investments that gets looked at. So just to kind of sum it up, I think what we're really seeing here in family office as a trend over the period is that we probably, as Ronnie rightly put it, I think we're probably 30%, 25 to 30% of what internationally is represented, because I think for any kind of family office to be able to cut across various verticals and in terms of requirements, it is very necessary that you need the sort of clients who will also keep engaging with you from time to time on various aspects, so that the trends that we talk about in multifamily office is something that gets added. I think we've been blessed enough to have this this multifamily office model for now nearly literally 8 years, and we've actually seen this kind of grow. And as I said, in all the things that I kind of showed you, the first half of it, which is the investments, actually takes up a lot of space. And this used to be the trend. It used to be probably 90-95% of the things was most investment related than anything else. But I think now people recognize the fact that because of the fact that any multi-office institution brings on the table in terms of practical knowledge, whether it is tax or legal or accounting or anything else. I think many families are starting to really appreciate that probably a multi-family office is a good model to go with, and I think it's evolving, and probably over the next 5 to 10 years, one should see more kind of happening in this space. Thank you very much.
Any questions?
Just want to know, how do you address the problem of conflict of interest?
Sure. So, as I said, the conflict happens when the model is something that you earn out of the, various manufacturers or various counterparties that you represent. This model that I talked about, and which even in case of us, the multi-family office model that we follow, which is the institutional multi-family office, we actually make money from the client in the sense that we have advisory. So this is a separate SIDD which is there. So we have a pool of investment professionals. We have non-investment professionals in terms of, there is a gentleman who actually looks at, tax, and he's an ex-ENY person. Now, he's obviously got about 9 to 10 years of experience practically looking at restructuring and mergers, acquisitions, etc., etc. So you obviously have to be investing in these resources. You have the group as well. For Kotak, obviously we have our tax expert as well, who's there. And we literally kind of, keep talking to various counterparts, whether it is legal or tax or for the inheritance planning, the estate bit, we have a solicitor as well. So these are all sets of individuals who are there, and somewhere the conflict to the extent of the revenue is not there, because when even if you have to refer to, see, finally we can't write opinions. A family office will not be able to write opinions. So we can guide the client, we can sit across with the Big Four, we can engage with them. We can give them the correct perspective from the family's point of view, but ultimately it is the family's decision, and if they want an opinion, they go outside and seek it. What we have to do is we just introduce them to the right set of, because there are, practically speaking, in taxation or legal, in any of these genres, there are people who are good in certain aspects, which are verticals even within the taxation. So if it is to do with takeover, where this family, we remember 3 months back, wanted to take over a Philippine-based company, and they were looking for someone who is a cross-border expert. Now we know for a fact that we've done this for some other family where this particular individual, I don't want to name, but this particular individual is someone who represents a legal firm, and this individual who comes from the taxation firm, who's got a good experience, handling these matters. So what we literally do is that we have our own person to be there in all these discussions, but that's about it. We don't make any money out of it.
No, I understand that. The thing is, tax and legal vertical is basically more of a statutory nature. So as an AMC, like Kotak is AMC, Kotak is private wealth management, Kotak is broker, many, it's a group of, Kotak is a bank as well. So,
sure.
Basically, what I'm asking is, especially in context of investments, you have investment products of, in-house. So when you are advising your clients to invest in something, generally that happens with a conflict of interest. Tax and legal is nothing to do with conflict of interest because, you have associates. And anyway, they may be, individual practitioners. So
Sure.
they may not be on your payroll as well. So there is, IIFL, there are other, Edelweiss. Many people are there who provide wealth management solutions. But on a practical ground, they have to deal with some degree of conflict of interest as they also have investment products to offer. I was especially talking about that. And
On the investment side?
Yeah, on investment side. And secondly, how do you take the accountability? If you are only, like a facilitator between the family and the relevant professionals who give them advices. So that facilitation is, in my view, probably it's not a family office as such, because family office has to take the accountability, has to give the opinions, not only opinions, but has to give the advice that this is good for you. See, generally entrepreneurs, I have seen that they are not very good at investments. I dare say this, because they are very much expert in their own businesses, but when it comes to a whole gamut of investments, may it be private equity, maybe mutual funds or equity, anything, they are not really the right people to take decision.
Right.
And that's why they need the family office. That's why they need advisor. So, my question is a little broader one on that case, that
Sure.
why that conflict of interest should not come here. It generally comes. That's why I'm asking, how do you deal with that?
Okay. So let me break it into two parts. So one question was with regards to investments and conflict of interest, and the other is accountability. So investments, just to give you an example, we have not advised on anything, any product of Kotak AMC nearly for about 4 years, 3.5 years. And one of the funds just came into our rating because we have a fairly detailed IPR in terms of rating, which we ourselves have developed. And it's just come on board, number one. So just to say, we have not sold any PMS. There are PMSs which the AMCs have, our own Kotak AMC has, which we've done. The point here is that I think, when it comes to advice, as I said, the investment committee is the most critical thing. Once, what we do is that for us, whether it's a family office client, our model is very straightforward. As Kotak Wealth, we had an advice. That advice is basis certain parameters. So there is an investment committee which meets once a month. There are external set of guys that we consult with, etc., etc. So once we have a strategy, that strategy will be common. It doesn't matter whether it is a 2,000 crore client or a 5 crore client. The color of advice cannot be different. So one is a strategy. The second most important thing is we were not open architecture when we started. So when I took over this business, say 9 years back, we were not open architecture. We were just doing Kotak products. So it is a very valid point that you had when you said that, because yes, that was a way, and that is how I think the Indian private banking industry has grown over the period. And I think we've also done that where we had come with certain concepts and it sold and we did whatever we did. But I think in 2007, when we took this license from RBI and SEBI, and we are a separate SIDD, as I said, so investment advisory services that I represent is a separate SIDD. So we follow a complete open architecture concept, wherein whether it is a manager based in Kanyakumari or Kashmir, we really don't get into that. For us, we have this strategy. Within this strategy, whoever is able to really, show us a track record and the fact that they've been able to not only generate the return but also manage risk, that is what we understand. We can only understand what they are doing as far as the strategies are concerned. So once that, so we have fairly kind of a detailed due diligence which we do, and you can check with peers and others, because once Kotak does it, everyone adopts it, is what I understand. But we have a fairly, very detailed due diligence process that happens. And there are other AMCs also you can check with, is that when we decide something, we actually go to the AMCs and say, you know what, this is what we feel is good. Now, can you structure something for us in these lines? We manage about 50,000 crores, so with God's blessings, we are there and we are doing the right sort of things. So we can ask these AMCs to literally help us, not that we can take over an AMC, But I'm just saying that whoever are good in certain things, we actually go to them. So even in debt, for example, there are certain people who are really very good. But there is someone who is very good. If someone, I think someone is there from the AMC, he will understand this. He's very good in credit. But we don't understand, it's a black box. He's got about thousands and thousands of crores in his fixed income credit strategies. But we haven't worked with him for the last 8 years, just because we don't understand. When we went and had a chat with him, he said, no, this is how I do it. If you want to do it, you do it. So the point I'm trying to make is that conflicts come in when you're not clear in terms of where the model is kind of gratifying you from. When you're clear that your gratifications are with the client and the client is paying you, then obviously the entire thing goes to one side. And on the other side, the processes and the way that you carry out your advisory is very important, because once that is an open architecture and it is driven by a particular, it can't be scientific, it's not science, but it's a particular process that it drives the entire strategy, then I think the marriage of both is something that can address the conflict. The second aspect in terms of accountability, yes, I mean, we have a license from SEBI and we have a license from RBI, so this is a fiduciary responsibility. So whatever we advise as far as investments goes is something that we are responsible for. Obviously, I am responsible for, if I am going to say that 100 rupees is something that I manage as a family office, out of which say 30 rupees is something that is coming to you. Now, I am also responsible for you, because ultimately the guy is going to ask me that this chap who's taken 30 rupees of your money, he just didn't do what he was supposed to do. So what were you doing? You were sleeping. I mean, as a family office, what were you doing? So the fiduciary responsibility still doesn't go away. So that still remains. So accountability remains. What I meant to say when I engage with consultants is that, and it is more from a tax point of view or a legal point of view, or etc., because we have guys who are legal, who are tax, who are, these are specialists. But ultimately, they cannot opine. We are a bank, we are a family office, we are more to do with, engaging with people. So we engage with the right set of people. We tell the families, because there are families from Indore, there are families, I mean, the kind of money that we are seeing which people are making with is and it's across, it's tier B, tier C cities, tier 2, tier 3 cities. So now they don't have access to what probably you and I have here in Bombay. And from that standpoint, I just meant that we understand this space, but obviously if the client wants a little bit more sophisticated kind of an opinion, we obviously have to go and engage with that set of people to literally do it. Yeah, sure.
So I'll request you all to take your questions later with Rajesh.
Sure. Thank you. Sure, sure.